Thank you. Yeah, my name is always an issue, isn't it? It's a typical Dutch name. The Italians in the room know how to pronounce my name in Italian. Bartolomeo della Torre. There's other pronunciations as well, but like that one. Good. Oh, I need that one. Thank you. So I'm in a bit of a pickle because in my presentation, I wanted to, share something with you that was new, and that was get out of the geospatial box. Both Petri and Michael already said it, so the genie is out of the bottle. So up to me just to repeat that, we need to get mainstream. So you've heard my presentation. Mike can go away now, but let's see what else I have to say here. Good. So my name is Bart De Lathouwer. I'm with the Open Geospatial Consortium, OGC, three-letter acronym. There's plenty more. And at the OGC, I want to make sure you hear our vision and mission is using location we connect people, communities, technology for decision making. For those that don't know us, we bring together communities of practice, experts from the community to tackle interoperability issues. That is what drives me as an individual. In the past, I've been with larger organizations, I've been a product manager, and what drives me, what gives me a good feeling, that feeling in your stomach. I have less stomach than before, by the way. I lost some kilos. And that is if I get energy back when I see people collaborate, when I can be there and make other folks successful. That is what drives me. And I think within the OGC, that is at the core of our mission, is to bring those communities together and get them around the table to agree on something, which is pretty much the definition of a standard. We're a consortium, a global consortium of members and associate organizations. We don't work in a vacuum, and I'll come to that in my presentation. The OGC is part of a bigger whole, where other folks like myself, we get that good feeling in your stomach when you see people collaborate. We bring thought leaders together in our meetings. It's for a year. We have an upcoming meeting, if you don't know, in Toulouse in 3 weeks. I think it's 3 weeks. It feels like 3 weeks. 4 weeks, there you go. Who was that? Oh, there it is, Clemens, thank you. And finally, the OGC is an organization where we create standards. I had that one last, by the way. You should have, isn't the OGC all about standards? No, well, yes. It's the communities that we bring together is where we go. You have to bring the communities together before you can agree on doing something, is getting folks around the table. And we all share that nice feeling in your stomach. So, Petri, thank you, and Michael for, saying the same thing. I reworded it a bit in another way. Spatial is not special. And by the way, the image in the background is from Blade Runner. Any occasion for me is good to talk about Blade Runner. So, no, let's not go there. So spatial is not special, which is another way of saying let's get out of our spatial comfort bubble and become more mainstream IT. Petri said, and I wrote it down, combine geodata with other data. Where's Petri? Oh, there you are. So you quoted combine geodata with other data. That's an important one. That for me is the major takeaway. We need to do that. 3 years ago, I ran a Horizon 2020 support action for smart cities. It was called Espresso. The acronym came before what it meant. Look it up, it's really weird. But it was called Espresso, and I was able to talk to many a city that called themselves Smart City, By the way, before I started the project, I knew exactly what a smart city was. You can extrapolate the rest, right? And so at the end of the project, my definition of a smart city was, Petri, what you said. And that was the ability to combine data that was not meant for each other. That's what smart cities do. Call it geodata with other data, is that ability to combine data. That is where the crux is. But you can only do that if you are, again, don't make spatial something special. We had the tendency to do that, and not because we liked to be special, probably because we had to be special. We were ahead of the curve, and I'll show some of that in upcoming slides. There's a lot in the spatial community where we have academia, we have research institutes, we have great brain power in this community. Plus, it's a lot of fun. I like, being in the geospatial community. It's fun to talk where stuff is in the biggest sense of the word. I like it. But there's one thing that we should not forget, and so you might have been wondering what that little asterisk in the thing is. That's normally when you see that in an advert, you know that their special conditions apply. And there you go. I couldn't blur the Blade Runner image too much. I love that movie so much. And so spatial is not special, but let's recognize the complexity, right? We all know that we have the geometry types, and the pointy things are relatively simple and easy for the rest of the world to discover. Beyond that, more difficult. And so whenever I say spatial is special, always, add recognizing the complexity. So thinking outside of the box, Michael, all good. But let's understand that we can be the specialists that will democratize location. It's absolutely essential that we mainstream, but recognizing that it's somewhat complex. Now, complexity isn't eye of the beholder, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean. So, everyone seen enough Blade Runner? Well, how did we get here? This is an image from, I believe, 10 years old. And it sort of depicts the history of where we go with the web. And if you see where the OGC started, so the OGC this year in August, we had a big party amongst ourselves where we were 25 years old. So we're way beyond puberty. And so we started off in 94. And WMS, anyone when WMS started? Yeah? What year? What year did WMS? 99, exactly, with and 2000, the first implementations in Sprint. So what I want to say with this, or why this is important, or why we were special, is that we were using web services before they came into vogue. And so we had to pretty much develop everything ourselves. There wasn't a lot. And so that we were ahead of the curve. And so, that's where sort of WMS kicked off and all the, what we call the OWS family. And then we're somewhere up there. And so what I want to do here before we go into the upper regions of where we want to go is just recognize the success of the web services that are out there. The geospatial web services, call it, thinking inside of the box. What they allow. So they allowed for, in the ISO version, for Inspire to stand up, for the aviation industry to standardize. You can read them here for yourself. Now, I was promised that there was going to be an internet connection. Ville, could you click on the link? If not, I'm going to make too much noise and going to be too much resonance. So I'm going to look at GeoSphere. There's over 200,000 servers. If you click on the link below, well, is it? Oh, all right, good. Well, there's rough, or you can have it? All right, a minute, okay. Anyone a good joke while we wait? Oh, there you are. And so there is 1.6 million distinct spatial GS, WMS, WFS, and all the other three-letter acronym services out there. And so what I want to do here is recognize, and there's probably plenty more, because these are the ones that GeoSphere could find. And some of them are non-advertised and non-discoverable. But just, take a moment here and, give a big round of applause for ourselves for setting up all these services. They're there, they're operational, they help decision makers on location-related information, whether that's for environmental monitoring or reporting or other, they're out there. And they're operational and they work. Can you close this one too? Alt F4. There you go. Thank you. Oh, look how beautiful. So that's the next version of Blade Runner. It's not a film noir anymore. Yep. Yep. Take your time, no worries, mate. No stress. And just recognizing that these services are out there. Yep, next slide. Oh, that's me. So there's been a good 20 years from the first versions of WMS and then later WFS and the others to where we are now. And the world around us has moved on as well. They learned from us, they learned from others, and now we have to get out of our comfort bubble, think outside of the box, or break out of the spatial data box, as said by the previous speakers, and become more mainstream. Spatial is not special, recognizing the complexity. And so, who recognized where this came from? Yeah. So this was Frans Kniebe from Geodan that gave a presentation at a meeting, and I'll show a picture of that. I think 5 years ago. Yeah, wow, time flies, ridiculous. Where Madame Globe and Mr. Cube met. Oh, 2014, exactly, so it is 5 years ago. And this is essentially what we're talking about here. And I think this was a really nice depiction, and it says it all, is where spatial meets the web, where the web is the new one. Well, if I go back, can I go back with this? If you look up on the top slide, actually, it says bottom there was this fight of the operating systems. I'm using Windows. No, I'm using Mac, so I'm superior. And all that is irrelevant now. All irrelevant. You use whatever operating system you want to use. The web is the new operating system. That's something that was not around when WMS got conceived. We still had these metaphorical, whatever operating system is the best. There was no talk about semantic interoperability, let alone linked data, or RESTful services. And so we have to come to grips with this. And so in 2014, a couple of folks had a conference call, and some of them you can see in the picture. This is me on stage taking this picture. Who was there? Yeah, Michael? Yeah, Clemens? And so when we were organizing this, we initially thought that we could raise interest for like 50 people, 50. And we ended up in the biggest meeting room that we could find in the Google office in London to host all these folks. We had to cut registration, and so that was so great to see. And it was all about linking geospatial and other data. So that's 5 years ago, where that idea of, hey, come on, we need to get mainstream got out. And so Phil Archer here on the left-hand side of the image. And sort of, that was that. You have these moments always when a great album comes, you know, Nevermind from Nirvana. I know exactly where I was when that album came out. There's other phenomena where you probably do this too, but I love music, and so I knew exactly where that was. This, for me, was one of those events that you knew you were there, everyone felt like this is special. Not special like spatial is special, of course, but you knew that there. Michael, would you agree that you felt there was something there, or Clemens, that for me anyway, it felt like there was something special going on. And that is where these group came together. Now, before I go on what that means, again, recognizing and standing, just recognizing that the current OGC web standards are there. They will not go away. So we're going to develop new web API or open API, or using open API standards that are more mainstream, that are developer friendly, and I'll come to those, whilst simultaneously maintaining the OGC standards baseline. Why? That's because we have all these operational services out there. These things work. People rely on them for decision making, and so they need to be there. And if something, well, let me keep it as is. They're there. They need to be supported. Plain and simple. Keep this in the back of your mind when you hear about, we're going to develop all this new stuff. That's all fancy and great. But there's users out there. Thank you, Michael, for that. I wrote that down too. This is the first user conference. So the users out there use the existing standards. They use the implementations. And so let's not forget about the user. It's all fine in research and being ahead of the band. That's great, but support what is out there. That's what this slide says in many words. You can read them for yourself. But please recognize and acknowledge with me that we could do both at the same time. So, what W3C and the OGC did in the past 5 years is, in the OGC we call it a subcommittee, spatial data on the web, came together online and in meetings and set up principles that we wanted to follow when we brought the OGC standards into the web environment, or the mainstream web environment, so that we become more web friendly, that we step out of our comfort bubble. Comfort bubble as well, but also the how we call it, the spatial data box. If we need to come out of it, we need to understand how we do this. And that is essentially what this joint group subcommittee did. And so you can read of some of these items, and I'm going to pick some of those. Make your spatial data indexable by search engines. What this means is make your data discoverable by the, well, I could say, the Google, but you need to generalize, by the search engines. At this stage, it's very hard to find the OGC web services on the web because they don't adhere to the current principles. And we need to make them discoverable. Link resources together to create the web of data. So this relates to, again, mentioned by the previous speaker, semantics or linked data. So a quick survey from the crowd here, also the folks up there. Who of you are familiar with how linked data works? So raise the hands. Yeah, okay. So I'm trying to guess here, 20%? An average crowd, I get no more than 5. So maybe we have passed the chasm. I don't know. This is one of these dilemmas. Who's familiar with the chasm theory from that book? Can't remember who couple. By the way, if you need interesting literature to read, go online, order it from Amazon, Crossing the Chasm. That's the name of the book, Crossing the Chasm. And it's about the life cycle of technology, or a product actually. So you have the early adopters and the laggards and those kind of things. And it's when, technology, there's early adopters, it goes up, and then suddenly it becomes mainstream. And what happens between the early adopters and adoption by a larger crowd is sort of black magic. And is this going on with linked data? I'm not sure. I wish, because it's really cool. So how am I doing time-wise? Who manages time? Plenty of time. Okay, so I never heard that before. You have plenty of time, Bart. So, good. What I'm going to do then, I'm going to give you a 5-minute, no, less, 3 minutes intro into linked data. And I'm going to do a couple of phrases and I'm going to ask you a question, okay? Bart is in Finland, okay? I think that's true. All right. The capital of Finland is Helsinki. Bart is wearing a tie. By the way, I'll always get this wrong. Michael, you too. And whenever I wear a tie, no one else does, or the other way around. But that's more awkward. It's easier to remove. And so Bart wears a tie. So 3 sentences, and here's my question. Are there any people in Helsinki wearing a tie? At least one. Now, I did not tell you that. But you were able to deduct from the 3 sentences that I used. That is the crux of linking data. So it's my sentences, of course, they were not innocent. They always came in three, right? What was it? Bart is in Helsinki. And the capital of Helsinki is, no, Finland is Helsinki. And then Bart is wearing a tie. So they always come in 3. And so it's like a domino. Who plays domino? I know I'm an old dude. But some of you might have played domino in the past, and in the digital world might have not worked. But that's exactly the same. So look it up. Young kids, look up domino and see how it works. Which is exactly how linked data works. So you put the blocks next to each other and you are able to derive additional information from the core information that I gave. So the 3 things is what they call a triple. So linked data is all about triples, don't forget. So if anyone asks you about linked data, yeah, sure, triples. It's like, whoa, cool. Who taught you that? And so that is what linked data is. Now I'm giving you the bare essence. There's plenty more. I should say RDF, and then and then I can make it more complex. But take this as a 101 course. And you sort of get an idea. But so you link things. So you have something, and then something that links the 2, and then something else. Now I'm not using the exact terms. I know, but that's how typically you relate things, how you link resources to get that bigger knowledge. Combine geospatial data with other data. So I'm a big believer of the semantic. I think that's where we need to go. Relational databases is great. I'm getting myself in trouble here, but hey, I'm digging this hole. I better, continue to dig. So with relational databases, it's all fun. We know that, but it's pre-optimized. The table structure is made based on requirements. Now, as we all know, requirements, they never change, right? They do. And so, but it's once you have that relational database with all the foreign keys and all that stuff, it's hard to change. with linked data is if you would dissolve a relational database, I don't know how you would do this, but then what you end up with, by the way, are triples. So table name, field, value. You can dissolve a relational database that way. And the only thing you would end up with is triples. Think about this. Back on topic now. I had enough time, right? Provide geometries on the web in a usable way. So again, here this is democratizing the knowledge that we have of spatial and location. Provide geometry on the web in the right level of accuracy, precision, and size. So don't make it more complex than needed. It's a tendency we have to solve everything 100%. Sometimes enough is okay. Show coordinate reference system to suit your user's application. So not a coordinate reference system isn't always needed all the time. You could do without. And so you can, again, read. And then expose spatial data through convenience API. So that is sort of the link to the next slide. And then for all of us, because we feel this need for metadata. Who's a big lover of metadata here? Dare to raise your hand. Who thinks metadata is exciting? I love metadata. If we find the time to enter it, But hey, so it's up there. Can't live without it. So, we're going to build modular API blocks, spatially enable web APIs in a consistent way. Every word on this slide has blood, sweat, and tears on it. So it came out of the spatial data on the web best practices. Leverage OpenAPI. Who's familiar with OpenAPI? Yeah, a couple? Yeah. So when I say Swagger, is that more? Yeah, same hands. And so that's how today if you want to be web friendly, you define your API using OpenAPI. So that's exactly what we do in the OGC. It has to be developer or focus on developer experience and usability. This applies to the 30-minute rule. Who's familiar with the 30-minute rule? So you give a developer, he or she, something, and within 30 minutes you have to come to a workable demo. That's the attention span that that a developer has. It says maybe more about the developer than anything else, but that's what we have to live with. And that's reality. And so it has to be developer friendly. Open development on GitHub, early implementations, in-depth validation. So the validation and the development and the standards now go hand in hand. It's not that some academics go into a room, they lock themselves up, come to something that is fantastic, and then throw it out there and say, good luck with it. As this is the first user conference, let's put the user-centric approach in this. And that is that early implementations, validate, have your tests together for conformity together with the specification. So right now is OpenAPI features is the one that gets a lot of attention, and I'll show that in a minute. There's others, coverages, map tiles. I injected a table join service. One of these little gems in the OGC that is not recognized enough. So who's familiar with table join service? I know a couple of hands that will go up. Yeah. Oh, good. So what is a table join service, Bart? That's what what was it, Screen IO or IO Screen, where you can ask questions? Yeah, so what is table? Well, table join service is a service that allows you to join spatial data with non-spatial data. How cool is that? We need this. And so there is a specification out there on regular web services on table join that is now being modified to go through or using the OpenAPI approach. Here's the roadmap. This image is pretty much here just to impress you. Okay, so please be impressed. So what this does, it relates a variety of activities on the development of the specification. Then they're both inside the OGC and outside of the OGC. Important is that there's initiatives in Europe on using European funds to develop this, and the call is out right now. It isn't out yet, but I want to contribute to this, and this is important to recognize. But yeah, be impressed by the picture and see how things relate to each other, and how they move from one to the other, which influences the other, etc. So you'd see that the OGC API features part 1 core is the one that sort of influences most of the others, like catalog, and out will come the common specification, and then processes and TLS and map services and the others. Good. Now maybe let me highlight, let's see if I can highlight. Can I? How do I, is there not a red dot somewhere? No. Here, let me point straight to it. And that is these hackathons and sprints. So that's where we eat our own dog food. So that's where we put them to the test. And I said, we want to test them as we develop those. Happen in hackathons and sprints, but they also happen in smaller communities, and then they bring that feedback to us. There's the OGC testbed initiatives and projects that provide input. So here's only the features being the main driver at this stage. So what does it look like? So I was told that this crowd was mainly technical, so of course you want to see some technical stuff. And you can get individual resources, or you can get collections. Here's what, if you would use, so I use Insomnia on a Mac to do requests. I don't know, there's plenty of other tools. So you do a get, and this is note how much more simple this became versus previous web service calls. That's good. These are all, my presentation is peppered with links. If you get your hands on my presentation, do follow the links. I tested them this morning, they worked. So it worked on my machine. Famous quote from a developer. And so they do work. Check them out. Just to give you a feeling of what they look like. Response format, typically HTML or GeoJSON. GML is supported. So again here, GML is great in the spatial community. Out there, not so much, so they're more GeoJSON oriented. And so that's great. You can, through content negotiation, you could get what the machine or the server is capable of. Yep. So again, here I'm not going to ask Ville to click on the links because it'll mess up the presentation. But again, they work. They have a valid statement behind, and they provide back GeoJSON. So take it from me that these work. And as part of the servers, this one is interesting. It has a working server up there, which allows you to bring up the buildings, I believe, in Helsinki, using OpenAPI. So it's really cool. At the same time, it's not just servers that are being built, but also clients. You need the two. And again, here, the links are there below. There is the address. So all this development you can follow on GitHub. You can lurk. Even better, you can contribute. If you're not new within the OGC, come and see me. Gladly sign you up. And so that you can participate or point you to folks that are working on this. Some advisory document if you want to endeavor in this community or you want to do stuff yourself. Again, a bunch of principles here. Number one being the most important, don't reinvent the warm wheel. Well, you can invent warm water and you can reinvent the wheel. Worst thing you could do is reinvent the worm wheel. Don't. There's stuff out there. And you can read, keep it simple and intuitive. And others that are out there. So again, for your reference. Eating our own dog food, there's initiatives right now, this one in November and another one in January, where they bring together communities and try out, how can we poke a hole in this? It's pretty much what it is. The specification itself is relatively mature. When we put it out there, it needs to work. You can only get one shot at this. You have to get this right. And so that's what we're doing right now. Good. Fellow Belgian compatriot, I don't know if he invented serialism, but he's a serialist, okay, and that's something that we put to practice in Belgium as a best practice. Look at our governments, I should say. We have a couple where we're sort of make things surreal. This is being taped. Not a good idea, Bart. OGC tech trends. So Open API is one of the trends that are out there. I wanted to share a couple others with you. How am I doing on time? Yep. 15, I go, oh, you, my God. This is going to be so interesting for me. So, on the tech trends. And there's a URL. You can go there and read it for yourself if you don't want to listen to me. But what you're going to find is that these technology trends that were up there are both very wide and very deep. And where it says breadth, identify and characterize the trends, that's where we, George Percival, who is our CTO, together with Ingo Simonis, they have this globe that they can actually predict the future. And they can see what's going on. And then they write that down as part of the trends mind map. And I'll have a bigger picture of them. Some of these trends are more ripe than others, and they will move to assess them and see how they fit within bigger technology roadmap, and then in the other programs we move them further, either in an innovation initiative or ripe to standardize. So this is when you look into George and Ingo's special sphere, you see a couple trends up there that are out there that we have identified as technological trends. And I'm sure you recognize a bunch of those. And so one of them is the spatial data on the web that we previously talked about, but also Neo-Geo, human and system integration. 5G, blockchain, quantum computing. By the way, on quantum computing, there is an indicator. You know exactly the moment that quantum computers come online. There's actually two reasons now. All encryption will be broken within a couple seconds, and all the remaining bitcoins will be harvested within a second. So, IT ethics and geoethics. I'm not sure what I'm going to say if that's right, but I believe that Europe has a big hand in geoethics. I might have a slide on that where I want to go a bit deeper. Big data computing, data sciences on AI. So there's an upcoming Location Powers event in Silicon Valley in November. So if you haven't seen that, come and see me. Spatial temporal models and the power of local. So these are the things that we have identified. All of these have links behind them. Please explore and let us know if they're to your use. So these are some of the technology trends that we have assessed. So there's the sphere, and then in the middle is the one that we're looking at. And so you can see the ones that we explored in Q1. The digital twin, an important one, static and dynamic data coming together, especially smart city initiatives, sensor data, 3D city representations. Web of data. So I gave you all a crash course in linked data. There's JQL, not to be confused with GraphQL. So there are the things that are big right now. There's if you come to the TC in Toulouse, the folks from JQL will be there. And so that is, we talked about linked data and putting the triples together. I haven't used the word graph yet, but if you put the triples together, that's typically what you get is a graph. And so there is a query language for it, so you can start querying. Edge computing, geo-IT ethics, here it is. GDPR is part of this. But also is your personal data and the use of your personal data for benefits of others. And if I say it right, there was a presentation yesterday, and it was here in Helsinki. Was it in Helsinki, CIMIC presentation, specifically on this topic. And so really happy to see that Europe is taking a lead. I don't know whether Europe is really taking the lead, but that's my feeling on geo-IT ethics. This is going to be a much bigger thing, and also within the OGC. So as said, the OGC is a community of practice coming together. It's much more than just standards. We all talk about how can we support the geoethics on data sciences, AI, machine learning, and then you can see the ones for Q4, the scaling, and the technology base map. So how do we put them together? We have this, so you have disruptive technology and sustaining technology, and then what is next and after next. And then we plot the technology trends on here and see where they sit. And so the green one, that is disruptive and next, so that's what we call RIPE. So data science, IoT edge computing, maps for CAVs. Again here, the geoethics, because it comes up a couple of times, and I see this coming up more and more. 5G, digital twins, indoor. Recently ran an indoor pilot in the context of first responders. I think I think we know how to navigate and know where we are outdoors, but where are we indoors? Which is, somewhat different from how we navigate outdoors. And so we're coming to grips with this and learning, how do we interoperate? Data sets that are point clouds, and you have indoor GML, city GML, how they all collaborate, but also how you navigate indoors. It's not as simple as you might think. And that's what we discover specifically in the context of first responders. So, my last slide, conclusions. Did I mention that spatial should not be special? I believe I did. So think outside of the box, think outside of the geospatial data box there. We need to align with mainstream IT, democratize location. Call it location, call it spatial, call it geospatial. OWS is here to stay. I just want to make absolutely clear that that is between your ears. The operational services, specifically in the Inspire context here, which we're all, first user conference. There's operational services, they work. And so we advance the new ones while maintaining the OGC standards baseline. OGC API aligns with the web best practice. So remember Madam Globe and Mr. Cube coming together, and so they share these best practices. Good thing here, I'm happy to say, is that also here the Inspire community is fully on board and working in the OGC and in other instances to pull this forward. I think in 2000, the geospatial community was ahead, and I think we're ahead as well on this one. Maybe not specifically on the web when it comes to pointy things, but the other things. And what we see on the technology trends is that the geospatial community is again leading where we're going to go. the ethics side of data, we've noticed that the location part, where are you on your smartphone is very location aware. And so that aspect really plays well. And so that's why I have up here is that we're ahead of the technology curve. So again, if you look at where we're going with the future trends with the Open API and the other, is have that vision of the OGC here is connecting people. I remember when I said, it's that feeling in your stomach that you're doing the right thing, where we bring those communities and technologies for decision making together. That really is what drives us. So with that, yeah, recognize the complexity. It's just add it up here. Just want to make sure. More than happy to answer any of your questions. Please reach out. Here's my contact details. If you see me walking or wandering along, just come to me and have a chat. If we don't know each other, let that be a goal that we all have. If go to someone every day that you do not know. Well, keep this within bounds. At a conference, talk to folks that you haven't talked to before, and get to know and see what they do and learn from each other and share that great feeling in your stomach. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, and we'll take questions later. I know there's opportunity for folks to answer or ask questions, so yeah, have a ball and let's see what comes out of that. So with that, I'm going to give the mic back. And
we'll get another time. Thank you, Bart. So we have plenty of time for questions. Yep, first, yep, have a look. Do we have anything on our, again, reminding you, screen.io/inspire, that's the service. You can just put any questions, any comments to Bart, to also other keynotes after this. So anything there?
You can give this back to Bart, and I will give this to you.
Okay, so
it's on.
So, do you hear me?
hold on.
It should be on.
The other way.
So we have a question. How can we get public administrations to experiment with the new standards more?
Well, let's see. I don't think public administrations are very different from other organizations, or they shouldn't be. And if they are, you can start initiatives. You can participate in existing initiatives, or take the example of the NLS here in Finland is join the community and shape the standards, shape where we're going to go. And at the same time, eat that own dog food. And develop and it's make sure you're part of the community. I think that's an important one. So that geospatial data becomes combinable with the non-geospatial data, and you can only do that if you participate. You can decide not to participate and just be a laggard, be a late adopter, but then you're going to eat. Well, here I am with that analogy with dog food. No, it's not a good one. You'll be using something that has been done by others, and I think I think the geospatial community is ahead of the curve. You have that ability to shape, and communities of practices where that shaping takes place. And so whether you're a public administration or any other organization, you can be part of that community. The entry level is not that high, and yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Maybe something live questions from the audience? Anybody?
You can make me run by raising your hand up there.
I will run with this mic.
Yeah.
I hope it works.
Yeah, he does. Don't tell me I was crystal clear.
Yeah.
I was wearing a tie, come on.
Okay, maybe no questions for now, but you will be available here just
here.
anytime during coffee break. You can ask Bart.
Yeah, if I'm alone, make sure I'm no longer alone.
Okay.
I don't want to feel lonely.
Just one final question, actually, from me. This might be an easy one for you, but which one do you prefer? The original Blade Runner or the 2049 version?
Ah, you see, that's... Oh, come here, let me... It depends. So you have to... So on the original one, look at the director's cut. That's important, because there is this trick with the origami, and there's a reference to it in the 2049 version. So you have to see the director's cut first. Yeah. The original, of course, is is the best. The photography of the movie, it's what they call tech noir. Oh, well, you better stop me because I mean.
Okay, yeah.
Bart,
we might come back to this.
Okay, we have one more question.
Good.
Okay,
so
one more question for you.
How do we ensure a better uptake of the standards by software projects while ensuring compatibility between different versions of the standards?
Okay. Well, again, here is being part of the community. But I think what is being done different is that we develop the specification and the tests and the compliance testing all at the same time. And we're taking our time to put it through that development cycle, so it's much more agile than it was before. And I think I see the same thing happening in the Inspire community, or how it's being picked up. And so that'll give us a more mature specification from the get-go. Does it answer that question? So, of course, versioning, requirements don't change. Of course they do, which requires another version. And so then the whole dilemma comes up of how do you want to be backward compatible? You don't? You want to change? Plenty of conference rooms have been filled and talked about on what is the best way of you're always going to have that dilemma of versioning. You can prepare as much as you can, is what we try to do. Is it perfect? Probably not. Yeah. And so you will always have that dilemma of the version. But I think what I see that is being done is that really is development of the specification, the testing, the compliance, all happening at the same time. Which is, again, is a best practice and the way we should move forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's give a big hand to Bart once again.